Welcome back to the Daily Brief. The last 15 minutes of this program we dedicate to climate change and whether or not we're making credible steps to ensure that we mitigate the effects of this very reality. Keep your comments coming in. The hashtag remains to be the Daily Brief at K24 TV at Sam W. Njoroge. A panel of two I will be engaging on this topic beginning right now. I begin with introducing them. To my extreme right, I've got Stephen Cheboi, who is the chair NGO Council, but he sits as a representative in the Pan-African Climate Justice Alliance. Welcome to the program. And to my immediate right, I've got Mithika Mwenda. He's the Executive Director, Pan-African Climate Justice Alliance. Welcome to the program. Sir, so far, what's the audit?
Yes, we are making progress in the fight against climate change, in combating climate change, in addressing climate change in terms of adaptation and mitigation, but we are not yet there. There are a lot of policies in Kenya. The latest, the National Climate Action Plan, which is under review, awaiting adoption by the government. We also have several other policies, the National Climate Finance and Green Economic Policy. We have the adaptation policy. So we have a lot of policies. But the question is, we have a lot of policies in Kenya, and even at global level. But what is the implementation?
What is the implementation?
The implementation.
I must first of all appreciate K24 and specifically my colleague Mithika on the issues around climate change. It's really a serious issue for our nation and all developing nations around the world. And PACJA has done a lot in terms of pushing for the policies around governance. And it's actually lack of concrete measures as a nation. And thus, organizations like PACJA ourselves are also coming strongly to push the government and other stakeholders to action. Yeah.
And what kind of action is this?
So first and foremost is in terms of how are we going to do to address the impacts which are manifested on the ground at farmers level. For instance, how is it affecting that maize farmer? How is it affecting that pastoralist in northeastern? How is it affecting the tea producer, coffee producer? Because climate change has tremendous impact on all these sectors. And we rely on rain-fed agriculture, for instance, and in a situation where there is now we are experiencing erratic rainfall. We are experiencing shifting seasons, for instance, and many others. And when you look at it, it is obvious for everybody. In the next couple of days, in the month of October, for instance, either 15th or 25th, we are expecting rainfall. But that has shifted. We may get it in October. So those are the impacts and the manifestations of this animal called climate change. But many people do not understand this. And we have a protocol. For instance, Kenya is a signatory to the Paris Agreement, where we have taken actions, and we need to domesticate that as a country. We have got so many other protocols. But the question is, yes, we have this. Right now, the Parliament passed and the President signed in 2016 on the Climate Change Act 2016, which defines the role of all stakeholders in addressing climate change. But the problem is now we are struggling with austerity measures. The Ministry of Finance has established the climate change unit. But the government now has started cutting finances, and I'm told even what we had set aside may not be available, the 500 million Kenya shillings to address climate change in Kenya, the contribution of the Kenyan government. So those are the intricacies of the issue of climate change.
The intricacies, of course, have touched on quite a number of issues. Even before you mention Paris, I also remember Kyoto.
Yes.
I remember Copenhagen, and many others that have happened before.
Yes.
Domesticating these treaties calls for legislation to be of quality at the grassroots level. But then do we have quality legislation around matters climate change?
in comparison with other countries, I can tell you and confirm that Kenya, we have made significant milestones in terms of this domestication, in terms of even formulating these laws at national and local level. The only problem is, and these are the geopolitics of climate change, is that we can do, as a developing country, as a poor country, the much we can. The problem of climate change is a global problem, but with a very serious impact or at local level. And so, according to what you are calling the Kyoto Protocol, according to the Climate Change Convention, is that we, as developing countries, have got very little to do in the contribution to this problem. And this agreement says the people who are to address this and support so that we can be able to address the problem which they caused in their process of development are the industrialized countries. That is the global north, and the UK, the US, and those other countries, because the climate change has been brought about by the greenhouse gases produced during their process of development. So they have signed into that. The Kyoto Protocol says you have responsibility to provide resources, that is finances, to help Kenya, for instance, adapt to climate change, to help Kenya mitigate climate change. And they have signed into it. The problem is when it comes to provision of those resources, then they do not do that.
There's something lost in translation between what you say you will do and what you end up doing.
That's the point.
As I cross over to Stephen, adoption and mitigation.
Yes.
Let's cite an example of the plastic bags, the shift from what we used to call plastic bags to the bags that we're using currently, reusable, recyclable, and stuff. There was a lot of knee-jerking, staccatoing across the process. People did not fully embrace it, at least not immediately. So what do we need to do? What do stakeholders need to do to ensure that whatever policy, whatever decision is reached at, translation into implementation and adoption is not as friction-based as it has been?
Actually, that is about our mindset. And first of all, allow me to appreciate what we did as a nation in terms of coming from plastic to no plastic. That was something we were given applause across the world, that Kenya has taken a lead in the process. And I want to say that it's about us changing our attitude. If we all agree that let's move from this point to this point, let's all go that direction, it could be good for our nation and our societies. And even as the world leaders are gathering currently at New York, it is a good opportunity for us to tell the world leaders they need to commit resources to the developing and less developed countries so that they can also mitigate and also adapt on issues around climate change. But we in Kenya and also in other countries, because climate change is a global problem, we need to really change our mindset when it comes to specific matters. Like as my colleague Mithika has mentioned in terms of changing of climate and even whatever patterns, it's good for us to know, even advise our farmers, advise our livestock production farmers that from this end to this end, we need to be this way, because again, it's now with us and it is real.
Absolutely. Mithika, coming to you, you've made reference to the Climate Act 2016. Rightfully so, it contains the roles and defines the roles that various stakeholders are supposed to take when it comes to this issue of climate change. But then, is that all we need?
Well, you know, a law is an implementation framework of a particular policy. So that is actually, it has provided an enabling environment in terms of what we are to do. All stakeholders, including government, civil society, private sector, development partners, and that's where we are now. I think now we are at that level, we cannot complain that we do not have the enabling environment. But as my colleague has said, we need really to look at how then do we integrate this into our daily systems. That we are not, it is not about the law, but we have to accept, acknowledge the fact that it is no longer business as usual. that we have to advise that farmer that now seasons have shifted and you are not going to rely on seasonal rain again. So we have to look for alternative kind of work, whether irrigation or not, and change the lifestyles, change the way we produce and consume. So these are some of the things we have. So it is more than, actually I agree, it is more than that, the law. We have really to look at the future and put in place the systems which are going to enable us and the future generations, how we are going to adapt and absorb the challenges which are coming into us. And this now brings me to what is the current debate of how do we manage Mau, for instance? How do we manage our natural capital? How do we manage our resources? That is the most important thing, because if we are not going to change with times, then it is going to be very difficult. And you can see the way our politicians are doing. So if we acknowledge that Mau is the source of our water, for instance, that is actually, it goes beyond now even that law. If we acknowledge that you are seeing the resource conflict we are having in central Kenya, about they are saying we want to be paid our water, the Murang'a county government, because they see Kiambu and Nairobi utilizes. So when we are unable to connect these things, these are the things which were said by scientists about the resource conflict, whether in northeastern, whether in central Kenya, because we were not able to embrace them. So once we integrate this into our laws and into our systems, even in terms of practices, then we are going to go beyond even the law, even the policies. We may make policies, we have been doing policies, but implementation leads all-inclusive process of implementation, and the people should understand that it is not them. We are not implementing this for Uhuru Kenyatta. You are not implementing this for your MP. You are not implementing this for PACJA, for NGO council. You are implementing it because it is your role, because it helps us. At the end of the day, stakeholder engagement is very important, yes, Stephen.
Yes.
In that regard, your upcoming conference,
yes,
what is it all about? What is it geared to achieve?
You will speak more about it, but it's more bringing stakeholders together. When we bring stakeholders from within Kenya and outside Kenya to discuss on specific matters around climate change and what each stakeholder can do, the local NGOs, the international NGOs, the government, in the governmental agencies, and even the citizens, it gives us the right picture of what each one of us can play towards ensuring that issues around climate change are tackled. But my colleague can tackle also
very
more
quickly
about it.
Yeah, it is actually the same issue we are talking about. How do we mobilize ourselves to overcome this challenge of which confronts us? The 7th editions of the Conference on Climate Change and Development in Africa, whose processes start on 7th October to 13th, is trying to mobilize stakeholders. But as a country which is hosting this edition, the 7 others having been held in other countries, is an opportunity for us to really showcase what we have done as a country, both at national level and even local level, because we have a very curious system of government, that is devolved government, where the issue of climate change has been taken seriously. We want to see how each stakeholder is going to do to bring these voices. But as hosting this, all the global community on 10th to 12th October is an opportunity for us to now mobilize and bring into fore the issues of climate change and how they are impacting on us, not only at Nairobi level, right, but even at local communities. Well, Mithika, Stephen, thank you so much for coming to the Daily Brief this day, my last day of the last month, of my first month, right here on the Daily Brief. I appreciate your company, your support this far. Let's keep the momentum going. My name is Samuel Njoroge. Have a fantastic afternoon. See you right here on Monday from 10 a.m. for yet another edition of the Daily Brief. Until then, have a fantastic weekend and God bless you all abundantly.